So did anyone else notice episode 3 of The Mandalorian pulled the same trick as episode 3 of The Last of Us? Or is it just me? This is the review of Champions, and I'm your host, Grandmaster. With me is a powerful panel made up of the finest champions Sakar has to offer. Let me introduce them to you. Voice only, joining us for the first time on this review series, Mr. Lord Deathman. How are you, man?
Good, glad to be there, or here rather.
Yeah, and I'm happy you're back on the show. Taylor, how are you?
I'm glad to be anywhere.
As am I. Today we're going to talk about episode 3 called The Convert of season 3 of The Mandalorian. Yeah, that's what we're doing. But before we do, I want to ask you all to help us out. Like and share this video and subscribe to our channel. And if you really can't get enough of us, you can join our ranks. Go to Sakar at sakar.freeforms.net, set up an account, get to know us, and yes, we invite you to join us in our podcasts or reviews. We would love to have you on the show. Consider this your final warning. After this point, the spoilers are incoming. So if you haven't seen this week's episode yet, please do that first and then check out our review. So, after bathing in the living waters of the mines of Mandalore, Din Djarin wants to make sure he is redeemed among the children of the Watch. But on his way there, he encounters an obstacle. And yes, there was another story that was told in this episode. So, Mr. Lord Deathman, you weren't there with us last week. Maybe you can update us on how you enjoy or don't enjoy The Mandalorian season 3 so far. And what did you think of the structure of this week's episode?
Well, you were absolutely right to say that this structure kind of mirrors the same structure as The Last of Us episode 3. So I don't know if this is a trend or these writers are trading notes in each other's writers' rooms or whatever's going on. But I have to say I enjoyed it. With two caveats. One being, first, it took me a while to get back to this kind of storytelling with The Mandalorian when I first started watching season 3, because after the absolutely breathtaking, dense, nuanced storytelling of Andor, we're back to something that I don't want to say it's more simplified, but it's definitely broader, and the storytelling is very, very it's hard to describe it, but in contrast to Andor, this is like, here's a protagonist on a quest, and there are obstacles in his way to getting at whatever he's trying to do. It's a much more straight through type of storytelling. But once you get back into The Mandalorian, it's consistently some of the best streaming television that you have, to offer in any genre. And I'm really liking it this season. And I particularly like this episode. I've seen a lot of chatter where people were like, oh, this kind of slows down the narrative again, and why are we revisiting this? And, how come I can't get more flamethrowers and grappling hooks and, rocket launchers, that kind of stuff. But I have to say, all the actors in this episode did a great job. And I don't know the actress's name, but I think her character is called Ella Kane or something of
Elia Kane.
Elia Kane, thank you. I think she's brilliant. She conjures up this kind of masculine energy that works with her femininity to kind of pose this really kind of sinister threat that seems laid back at first. I think she did a brilliant job, and it's always great to see the guy who's playing the Dr. Pershing, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. So I like the two contrasts between those characters a lot. And I like the story of not just their pairing, but also the bigger story of how former Imperials are being repatriated into the new Republic. And, it just goes to show you that one government might not be as bad as the other government when it comes to some of their activities. But putting the politics aside, it was pretty sophisticated storytelling for where Disney usually goes with Star Wars, and I'm glad they're going sort of up market. But yeah, it was just interesting to see that process, to see where people are being placed, how they're being treated. And it had some really, I won't, give it away so far in terms of the early part of our conversation, but it had some really dark moments in this episode, which are somewhat unusual, I think, for the Mandalorian. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I did too, but I do have some critiques, but we'll get into that later. Taylor, what were your thoughts on this third episode, which was quite an odd one out, if I may say so?
Yeah, just to follow up with Lord Deathban, Ella, if that's her name, the communications officer, she's played by, I believe her name is Katie O'Brien, and she's having a big year because she's also in Quantumania, if you remember. So good for her.
Yep.
And I think she's doing a great job in this show, or in this episode. That's all we've seen her in so far. She was in last season.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with Lord Deathman. This was a very different. It was a strange episode, really. It started out with that really, really great action scene with the dogfight with the TIE fighters. And wow, was that ever well done. That makes you wonder what they could have done with Rogue One if they hadn't decided to scrap that project, because that was some really cool dogfighting scenes.
Yeah.
So it started with that, and then they made their escape, Bo-Katan and Jin, and then it cut straight to Coruscant, if I'm saying that properly, the capital city there, capital planet, and then we got a whole like a different show for 40 minutes or so. Very interesting, like you said. I agree. It is, it's another corner of this vast galaxy, and we're seeing a whole other part of it, and we're seeing, like Lord Deathman referenced, a portion of the government of the New Republic, I guess you call it now, the portion of the New Republic now, and what's happening in another part of the galaxy, relating back to the recent demise of the Empire. So again, very interesting, and of course, all the acting was top notch, and it's kind of strange that, you could probably tell that something was shady going on, that the way that she was kind of, leading the doctor there into something. I don't know I didn't necessarily know that, she was setting up a trap the way she did, but I kind of thought something shady was going on. But it was all very well executed. And then at the end there, when he was getting his re-education or whatever, his treatment, and then she just cranked it up when nobody was looking. She cranks it up. So I was like, what is she trying to do there? Is she just trying to torture the guy, or is there some method in that to erase his memory or something, or to reprogram him back to the Empire? And she actually has plans to, who is she working for? A lot of open questions, which is fine. It's only the third episode.
Mm-hmm.
But my big question is this going to connect to the Mandalorian this season? Because I think if it doesn't, then I think that it's kind of a waste of time. I'm not saying this storyline is a waste of time, but if it doesn't connect in a timely manner, they could have shown 15 minutes of it in each episode, as opposed to taking basically an entire episode of this story.
Actually, that's my question for both of you. Last week, Taylor, we were discussing that there was a episode 2 felt like there was a lot of filler in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if it wouldn't have been better if they would have cut this 40 minutes story into 3 parts of 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever, within those first 3 episodes, and then have more of Mando and Bo-Katan spread out as well, so you don't need as much filler about, like we said, just put another monster on their path, just to have a fight scene, so we have another 3 minute covered in the episode. And you could have made it a much more interesting, like Lord Deathman said, the writing on this show, although I enjoy watching it and I absolutely enjoyed this episode as well, it's not on par with what Andor did. So,
Yeah.
my question to the both of you is, did they make a mistake in their editing or writing or whatever? How do you guys see this? Taylor, you go first, then Lord Deathman.
I think it's a really strange choice that they made, in a storytelling choice, to go from Mando and Bo-Katan. Basically, we saw them for maybe 10 minutes or so of action scene, and then to go into this other part of the galaxy for the whole, almost the entire rest of the episode, except for the ending scene, which was, very low key. If it builds into something directly and relatively quickly, then I think it'll work out. But if it doesn't, if it ends up being a throwaway episode for, maybe they get back to it in the final episode of the season, or if they wait till next season, then I think it might have been a mistake to do it this way. I think it would have been better to build up that side story or that connecting story little by little, as opposed to all in one bunch. But again, the jury's still out.
Can you imagine if you get like these kind of scenes over the course of 3 episodes, and then you get like the betrayal from Elia Kane towards Dr. Pershing? I think it would have made much more of an impact. Yeah?
I think maybe, yes.
Yeah, okay. Lord Deathman, your view on this. And you can talk about The Last of Us, because there it worked actually in episode 3 to have a side story.
Right. Yeah, I was you're one step ahead of me as usual, Grandmaster. I was going to say they did the same thing in The Last of Us to really good effect. So I'm taking it on faith that they might be able to do the same thing here. But that being said, I agree with you and Taylor. It is a strange choice to sort of derail the narrative of the main character of the show, following this gunslinger, metaphorically, as he tries to go on this quest, and then suddenly jumping in the story of not even a side character, but like a cameo character from previous seasons, now seeing how he's doing. But I have a theory about this. But before I get into it, I will say that I will agree with both of you that if this doesn't tie into the Mandalorian story in some kind of organic way, I think it would have been a failure, this episode. But for now, I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt, because I think that they did a pretty good job of setting up the bookends of the Mandalorian story for this episode. And then in the middle, kind of switching the pace to this other more low-key story. Who knows? Maybe they did it for budgetary reasons. Like, we're running out of money, so let's tell a story of a guy that doesn't need a bunch of special effects or dark saber or whatever. But in any event, I think it was well done. So I am going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I do hope it ties in. My theory is really, I don't know if Elia is as an Imperial remnant, she's been clearly resistant to the repatriation process somehow. And this could be the start of, I don't know if where we are in the timeline for Star Wars, but I don't know if this is Imperial remnants now beginning to rebuild the First Order, or build the First Order out of what is left of the Imperial forces. This all, it's revolving around cloning. And as we know from the wonderful third theatrical Star Wars film, that was, what was it? What was the last one with Rey in it, guys? Help me out here with the title.
The Rise of Skywalker?
The Rise of Skywalker. There you go. That masterpiece. That saw the whole, that was about the cloning and the Emperor coming back via cloning. This is about cloning. So, maybe Elia is just trying to tie up loose ends. Anyone who has like expertise in cloning, she's just trying to make sure the Republic doesn't have access to them, even though the Republic doesn't seem very interested in cloning research. So I don't know what the play is, but I have a feeling that it's all going to kind of tie in, or at least that's what my theory is.
Yeah, this time you were ahead of me, but because my next question was going to be, is this the beginning of, are we witnessing, sorry, pardon my French, the beginning of the rise of the First Order? But you basically already speculated about that. However, I have another theory. Dr. Pershing will turn out to be Snoke.
Uh-oh. They bear a striking resemblance. So.
Yeah. Dump the glasses and the beard, and it's 2 drops of water.
Right. There's Snoke.
There's definitely something, a bigger organization behind Elia King, because Dr. Pershing drops the fact that he likes those biscuits, and I think it's an hour later, they're standing in front of his door, and she never could have made it to those shipyards to get those cookies, if you know what I mean, which she claims. So there's definitely a bigger organization behind it, and I don't think the Empire is that as much gone as they are thinking. Agreed? Taylor?
Yeah.
I think that's certainly a strong possibility. I mean, if she is part of an organization, who else is involved? Of course, that's a big question. But again, this is like, it could make a whole nother show about this alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless they're trying to clone the mythosaur, what the heck does this have to do with Mandalorian?
With the Mandalorian, right? What does this have to do? And we come back to the central question: what does this have to do with the Mandalorian? But I'm willing to give them an episode or two to sort of tie it together.
Yeah, and I'm sure they will. There's a reason this is inside the or within this show. I mean, I do, however, think that again, this is my critique on this episode. I think they should have cut this up and handed it and divided it over those 3 episodes. I think it would have had a better dramatic effect. You could have spent a little bit more time, and we will get back to that storyline with Bo and Mando in this episode. And I think overall it would have worked better. But maybe there's a reason they did it the way they did. Taylor, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, what if this doesn't lead to anything directly in The Mandalorian? What if it's actually leading into Ahsoka or another show? Because remember, during Book of Boba Fett, we basically got an episode of The Mandalorian in the middle of Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah,
I mean,
which was basically a setup for The Mandalorian season 3.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they had to let him fall out of grace so they could start this season with him on a quest to redeem himself. So, yeah.
And with Baby Yoda back.
Yeah, exactly. Because The Mandalorian without Grogu would really be weird. But anyway.
But there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of possibilities. There's First Order. There's still, I forgot the guy's name, Giancarlo Esposito.
Moff Gideon.
Moff Gideon, thank you. He's still alive. I guess he's supposedly in custody somewhere. But then, of course, Palpatine's Force Ghost is out there. Snoke, of course, was an attempt to clone Palpatine. So maybe she's working for him or working for the First Order, which works for him, in order to get this guy's cloning expertise. But again, there's just so many threads out there. And
then she killed him before he could start to work on it.
Well, right. Did she kill him? I don't know if he's dead or not. But if she fried his brain, he's not going to be much use to him either. So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. For Deathman.
Yep.
What do you think will happen with Bo-Katan? I mean, she's now sort of a member of the Children of the Watch.
Yeah, and this is why I didn't mind them cutting to this seemingly unrelated story, because the two bookends, the beginning and the end of the episode that do involve the Mandalorian and Bo, were pretty excellent. From the dog fights that Taylor mentioned, extremely well orchestrated, felt like big budget movie stuff. And then when you get to the episode, I think they did something that's pretty hard to do with me so far, as a big consumer of science fiction streaming. They surprised me when the armorer tells Bo that she herself has been redeemed by bathing in the waters, in the mines of Mandalore, the living waters. That gives her not just an opportunity to join the Watch, but it allows her to cement her claim, to further cement her claim as the ruler of Mandalore. She now has, her claim Kreese on her side, and now the Watch can particularly, if she's willing to keep that helmet on, she now has the loyalty of the Watch, which could be setting us up for something like her legitimately taking back her claim to the throne of Mandalore. I think it's politically, for the Mandalorians, it's a pretty fascinating thread they've put out there.
Yeah. Last week, Taylor and I speculated that we may see the restoration of Mandalore in some way in this season or in the coming seasons of the Mandalorian, because they hinted strongly at that in episode 1 with the builders on Navarro. That could also come into play with Bo-Katan as the new ruler of Mandalore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense, right?
It does. And again, I'm excited to see what they're going to do. And I think they continue to do a great job with this show. And just wanted to circle back about the comparisons to Andor. It is a Star Wars show, so inevitably we have to compare the two. And again, I think Andor was functioning on another level with the subtext and the sophistication, the level of nuance that they brought to the storytelling there. But that's not to take anything away from The Mandalorian, which does have more simplified storytelling, but it's not like simple in the sense that you have to be a simp to appreciate it. It still has that Saturday morning cartoon vibe in the best possible way. And I just love the idea of following the quest of, the Mandalorian and Grogu as they, go from point A to point B to wherever it is they're going to end up. I'm there for the journey with them.
I agree. Taylor, do we get enough of Grogu or not enough of Grogu, or maybe even too much of Grogu? Or Baby Yoda? I know you prefer to call him Baby Yoda.
Yeah, well, you can never have too much Baby Yoda, but I think they're doing it about right. I mean, they could overdo some of the cutesy stuff, but I mean, without him, the story would be pretty grimdark at this at this point. He provides that little bit of levity, that little bit of heart. Mm-hmm. And they would just be hacking each other, blowing each other to death all the time if the baby wasn't there and didn't need protection and things like that. So I think they're doing it about right with him. Yeah. And just to follow up on Lord Deathman, the Andor and Mandalorian, as he said, are very different kinds of shows, and I actually appreciate Lucasfilm trying to do different types of things with the Star Wars universe. Andor is very much more in the line of a character study and a political thriller, a very psychological Cold War-esque spy story, whereas of course Mandalorian is much more of an action adventure, pulpy Indiana Jones type story. And I love them both. It's not like one type is better than the other type. It's just they each focus on different things. Yeah. And I think both of them are doing what they do very well.
Yeah. I think it's also better than, let's say, the other live action Star Wars show we got, the Book of Boba Fett, where in the middle you get all of a sudden apart 2 episodes that feel like The Mandalorian 2.5, and then we end up with a finale, like I said last week, where a kid just throws his action figures out of a toy box and let them fight in his head.
Right.
Yeah, this feels at least like there's some attention to storytelling. To me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but I do want to go on record saying that I'm in for another season of the Book of Boba Fett if they're willing to keep the focus on Boba Fett. I know some of the fans are like, let bygones be bygones, and I don't have to see any more of that. But it would be a shame not to bring Fennec Shan and Boba Fett and some of the great characters from that show, just to have them kind of fade away.
I actually wouldn't be surprised if Boba Fett joins the Children of the Watch as well at some point in this season of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
He has the armor. If he baits in the waters, and he baits a lot in waters. Maybe not living waters, but still.
The bathing is not a problem for.
No, bathing is not the issue. So maybe they will accept him. I don't know if he walks the creek, whatever. Yep. So I think it's time for our rating. And it's easy this time. It's only one episode. So, Mr. Lord Deathman, for you the honor to rate this week's episode first.
Absolutely. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this episode an 8. I thought it had great action sequences. I thought it had great performances. I also think that they're bringing a little intrigue into the story. Maybe they're dipping into the well of storytelling that is like Andor, which is a little bit more politically focused in terms of showing us what's going on with the transition from the Empire to the New Republic. There were some statements about mental health. It was really a good episode. I even like those little vignettes where Dr. Pershing has to go see his PO, who is an android.
Yeah. His taxi driver was also an android. And by the way, I would throw the android out of the taxi if he kept talking about museums in Coruscant. But anyway, Taylor, can I have your number?
Yeah, I'm going to give this episode a 7 because if they do not follow up with this storyline that they started in this episode, then it's kind of a fail, as Lord Deathman said earlier. So, like I said, everything that happened in the episode was fine. The acting was good. I also liked the interview scenes with the robot counselor or whatever it was. But yeah, everything that was done was done fine. But again, if they don't start bringing this together into a coherent series, I mean, we're 3 episodes into what is it, 8 total in the season, and I have no idea what what Jin's story is for the rest of the season. There's nothing set up at this point. So if they don't start bringing it together, it could be a problem. So that's why I'm giving this episode a 7. Which I could change later if it actually does pay off. But if it's just a distraction for the rest of the season, that would keep it at a 7.
I'm with you, Taylor. I'm gonna rate this week's episode also a 7 out of 10, and that's mainly due because if it doesn't come really tie in another, then I would have preferred if they cut this story over 3 episodes and had less filler in episode 2. That's basically how I see it. I think that this has the potential to be a failure in writing and editing, if you know what I mean, if you understand what I'm trying to say. But overall, I've enjoyed both storylines and the developments in those stories, and I thought what happened in the end with Elia Kane basically frying Dr. Pershing's brain was very interesting, and I can't wait to see what happens next with this. So 7 out of 10, pretty solid, not super good, but okay. Well, that will conclude this week's review of Champions for the Comfort, or episode 3 of season 3 of The Mandalorian. We hope you have enjoyed our discussion today. If you did, you can help us out by liking and sharing this review and by subscribing to our YouTube channel. And if you really want more of us, you can join our forum at sakar.freeforums.net. We would love it if you join us. We will be back with our review for episode 4 next week. And we have planned to do a review for Shazam! Fear of the Gods and Secret Invasion. The series is dropping soon as well. So there's lots to come from us. For now, I thank you all, and also on behalf of our champions, I wish you to be safe and be well. Bye.